Hi folks, HR Funk here. A few days ago I was sifting through my gun safe and it occurred to me that I now have 3 firearms from the Smith&Wesson Performance Center. And I thought it might make an interesting video to compare those Performance Center firearms against their standard production counterparts and see really what you get for your money when you pay the extra for a Performance Center revolver, pistol, or rifle. Actually, all I have are revolvers and pistols, but I still thought the comparison would be valid. So I'm going to take a look at each one of my 3 Performance Center firearms. I'm not going to do an in-depth review of them, but I am going to point out the additional features that you get when you buy a Performance Center pistol. And then I'm going to compare it against a standard production Smith & Wesson to see how much more you get for your money with a Performance Center firearm. And here are the 3 Performance Center pistols that are currently residing in my safe. They are my Performance Center 629, my Performance Center 637, and my Performance Center M&P 40L. Now there are certain themes that you will see repeated in the Performance Center firearms. One of them is a non-standard finish. My 629 has a very nice matte bead blasted finish as opposed to the standard 629 that has a satin finish to it. My 637 has quite a few embellishments. The cylinder flutes are polished, the trigger face is polished, the cylinder release is polished, and the hammer is polished. There are also several places that it has special markings on it, since this was a limited edition revolver. My M&P 40L has pretty much the standard finish, but you'll notice that the barrel is polished, and we also see the lightning cuts in the barrel, and it's a 5-inch as opposed to the standard 4 1/4 inch. So there are still even some differences in the finish of the M&P. Another thing you see many times with the Performance Center firearms are non-standard sights. Now with my 629 I have pretty much the standard micrometer adjustable rear sight, but you'll notice the front sight is a very high visibility red ramp, and also the barrel is all ready for scope mounting. We have the cuts in the rail on top of the barrel for Weaver type scope mounts, so it's very easy to mount a scope to this revolver. The sights on my 637 are pretty much the standard sights that you would see with any Model 37. So this is one firearm that does not follow that particular theme. The sights on my M&P 40L are the high visibility and high profile suppressor style sights, and the reason for that is because this is also a core pistol, meaning it is optics ready. All I have to do is remove this panel, put on the proper plate, and I can install a micro red dot sight on the 40L. So again, with 2 out of the 3 pistols, we see that enhancement to the sighting systems. Another feature common with handguns from the Performance Center are factory designed and factory installed compensators or suppressors. We can see on my 629 I have the factory installed compensator, which does help with muzzle rise with heavy 44 Magnum loads. This revolver also is heavy, which also helps to dampen that recoil, but the compensator does assist with muzzle flip. On my 40L, not only are the lightning cuts in the slide, but the pistol is also, if I can line it up so you can see it, ported, also to help with muzzle rise when shooting this particular pistol. So we have factory porting and factory compensators, and again with the 637 there's really nothing of that. So it's not across the board. You don't see these with every single firearm, but you do see these enhancements with a lot of them. With their pistols in particular, a lot of times you will see from the Performance Center special grip options. You can see the nice wood grips on my Performance Center 629. I also sent this back to have my name laser engraved on it, which I think is an extra nice touch for this particular revolver. I have hunted with this revolver many times in the field. It has taken several deer. It is an extremely capable hunting revolver, which is exactly what it was intended to be. The grips on my 637 also are special because they are intended to be used for inside the waistband carry without a holster. The grip, as you can see, clips over a belt when the revolver is inside the waistband, or even if you're not wearing a belt, clips over the waistband to hold the revolver in place and keep it from slipping down inside your pants or shorts or whatever you happen to be wearing. So again, we see those special grips. The grips on the 40L are enhanced over the standard M&P, or I should say the standard 1.0 M&P. They are the core special textured grip inserts, but those grip inserts are available with any core pistol from Smith&Wesson, so this is not specifically a Performance Center enhancement. One of the most common and most welcome features of the Performance Center firearms are the factory tuned actions, and all three of these firearms that I have with me here today have specially tuned actions. And these, I wish once again I could hand you these firearms so that you could feel the actions. The core, or the 40L I should say especially, has just a beautiful trigger break, and I'm going to weigh these on the trigger scale in just a moment or two. But I'll also grab the 637 quick, and also it has just a wonderful double action only trigger. So how do the Performance Center guns stack up against their standard production counterparts? I'll start once again with the 629, and I have my standard factory 629 to compare. We can see right off the bat the difference in the barrels. Again, the Performance Center revolver has a heavier profile barrel intended to help with the stiff recoil of heavy 44 Magnum loads. It has a non-fluted cylinder, also adding some weight to the revolver, and it has the compensator, as opposed to the standard revolver that has none of those embellishments. It has the improved sights. I do like the sights on the standard revolver as well. I like the red ramp with the white outline micrometer rear sight, but there's no way to argue the fact that the red ramp on the 629 Performance Center is even easier to see than the red ramp on the standard production revolver. The finishes, you can see, as I noted before, are different. The hammer and trigger on the Performance Center revolver are chromed, whereas the hammer and trigger on the factory 629 are case hardened, which is the standard finish for those parts. And in general, you just see there is quite a bit more in the way of features and enhancements on the Performance Center revolver than there are with the factory revolver. Shifting gears to the 637, I do not have a standard production Model 37, so I'm going to use a Model 442 as a stand-in, which I think will work pretty well because it is still a 5-shot 38 special alloyed J-frame revolver, and since my 37 is intended for double action only fire, I think the Centennial version, which is also double action only, should serve well for comparison purposes. We see, to begin with, the embellishments to the finish that I mentioned before with the special polishings and markings. Now the 37 would have silver anodizing, similar to what you see here, on the frame, and it would also have a stainless steel barrel and stainless steel cylinder. But otherwise, it would not have any of the other special polishing or markings. It would not have the factory tuned action, and as I compare those side by side, the Performance Center pistol is lighter and the action is smoother, although the standard production gun is no slouch. That's pretty good action on that 442. The 442 also doesn't have the special grip intended for waistband carry. And in general, you just don't get nearly as much in the way of enhancements and features in the standard production revolver as you do with the Performance Center revolver. And last but certainly not least, I'll compare my M&P Performance Center 40L to my 2007 vintage M&P 40. One of the things I noticed when I picked these up is how much lighter the Performance Center pistol feels in my hand, and I weighed them both on the official Cabela's scale and they're both the exact same weight, so I guess it's just a difference in the balance with the longer barrel and the lightning cuts. For some reason it feels lighter than the standard production pistol. Otherwise, you'll see the finish on these two is pretty much the same. You don't get a lot of enhanced finish with the M&P 40L, other than the fact that the Performance Center pistol does have the polished barrel. But again, you see the lightning cuts, you see the porting on the Performance Center pistol as opposed to the standard production pistol. And you see the specially enhanced grip texture, if I can get both of these where you can see them, with the Performance Center pistol as opposed to the standard production M&P. Again, the big thing with these two is the action. The action in my standard production pistol is not bad, but when I compare it to that Performance Center gun, it does feel a little heavier. Although still not bad for that standard production pistol, but it's also had several thousand rounds through it, whereas the Performance Center M&P 40L is brand new. One thing I forgot to mention about the action on the 40L is it does have a factory installed adjustable over travel stop for the trigger right there. And I do notice that as I'm squeezing the pistol, or squeezing the trigger rather, that there is no over travel whatsoever. I don't have to adjust it at all because it already feels very good. So let's see just how good these factory tuned actions are. I'm going to start with the 629, and since this is a hunting revolver that typically would only be fired single action, I'm only going to check the single action pull. I'll check the action on this revolver first, then I'll check my standard production 629 just to see how much difference there is. And the Performance Center is coming in at 3 pounds 12 ounces. That's actually a little heavier than I expected it to be, but it does have a very good let off. So now let's check that against the standard production 629. And here we go with the standard production revolver. A little over 4 pounds. 4 pounds 3 ounces. So we see that the Performance Center action is a little lighter, or at least the trigger is a little bit lighter than the standard production revolver. By the way, I said 629 before. This is actually a nickeled Model 29. It's one of the few revolvers I don't have an action job on, so I'm using it to check the action for the factory as compared to the Performance Center revolver. So that said, I'm going to move on to the 637. And now we'll try the double action only pull on the Performance Center 637. £10 pounds 4 ounces. Not bad. I'm losing my voice for some reason. Not bad for a double action only revolver. And the action is very, very smooth. Now let's check that against the 442. And here we go with the double action only pull on the 442. Almost 12 pounds. 11 pounds 14 and a half ounces. So the Performance Center revolver definitely has a lighter double action only trigger, and it is noticeably smoother, although again, the 442 has a fairly smooth action. I'm kind of impressed by this particular revolver for the standard factory action that it has. And lastly, we'll check the action on the M&P 40L. £6 3 ounces with a very nice let off. And we'll compare that to the standard production M&P, albeit a well-worn standard production M&P. Well, all those rounds paid off because the standard production pistol is actually just slightly lighter than the Performance Center pistol. But again, this has cycled many, many rounds, and the Performance Center pistol is brand new. So are the Performance Center firearms really worth the extra price that you pay over their standard production counterparts? A lot of that's going to come down to your personal taste and your thoughts on the matter. There are certainly, as you've seen, enhancements and features that are incorporated into the Performance Center guns that don't exist in the standard production, but each one of these standard production revolvers and pistols are ones that I really like and that have served me very well, and I have harvested many deer with this particular 629, and I've harvested many deer with this particular 629. So as far as their intended function, they both serve that purpose very well. If you have the extra money and you want or desire these extra features and functions, they're definitely apparent in the Performance Center firearms. But if you can only afford the standard production models, they'll serve you pretty well also. When we look at the price difference between these firearms, the standard production 629 these days in my area is running about $800, maybe $850. This particular Performance Center revolver is about a $1,200 or $1,300 revolver. So there's a significant step up to get these extra features and functions. Moving on to the 637, we see that same price dynamic. The standard airweight J-frame, like the 442 or like the Model 37, in my area, many times you can find on sale for less than $400, whereas the Performance Center 637 is going to be about a $650 to $700 revolver. So you see that significant step up in price, and again, whether or not it's worth it to you to have these extra features and functions really comes down to your own personal preference and your thoughts on the matter. And that same thing holds true for the M&Ps. There are definitely features with regard to the M&P 40L that I like, and most particularly the ability to add that micro red dot sight that I don't have with my standard production pistol. But I carried this pistol on duty as a police officer for 7 years. It served me just fine in all the shooting that I did with it, all the training, all the use that I had while I was working. This pistol did absolutely fine. And all these years later, the finish has still held up very well, and it still performs its intended function just as well as it did the first day it was issued to me. So whether or not the 40L is really better isn't so much the question as do I prefer the enhancements and the features of the 40L nowadays as compared to the standard production pistol. So that's the video for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions and comments, as always, leave those below. And until next time, good shooting. Bye-bye.